My name is Nooh Kasraie. I'm a PhD in education. I'm also the head of school at Rise Academy. I teach at the university as a tenured professor, mainly teaching to principals. So we have a school leadership program where we train teachers and principals, mainly school leaders. And it is an honor to be with you tonight or today, wherever you are in the world. In the United States, it's night here. Um, so our discussion tonight is around the concept of pedagogy, and with the title of Innovative Pedagogy, Preparing Students for a Different Tomorrow. Um, let me do this. Raise your hand if you know how to do it in Zoom. If you are an elementary teacher, go ahead and raise your hand in Zoom if you're an elementary teacher. I just want to get a feel of the participants. Okay. So these are folks who are teaching to younger kids. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Now, if you can go ahead and lower your hand, and now raise your hand if you teach middle school or high school, upper grades. Okay. Thank you very much. Go ahead and lower your hand, and now raise your hand if you are not a teacher and you are an administrator, like a principal or some other administrative position, not a teacher. Very good. Thank you very much. That gives me an understanding of the audience. If you can go ahead and lower your hand, I would appreciate that. So let's get started with some questions. And you may type the answer, or if you feel comfortable speaking, you're more than welcome to unmute and speak. It will be good if we can have just one person speaking at any given time. And but before asking the question, we were having another webinar with some school leaders in the United States, principals, and this was a picture that one of them showed that, as a principal, this is what they're doing these days, thinking about the town hall meeting on Zoom, the Zoom classes, COVID-19 updates that goes to their administrators, to their teachers, to the students, to parents, creating family videos at a time that the school is online. In the United States, many schools are still online. Coming up with, learning about new technologies such as GoGuardian or Seesaw, having weekly meetings online with parents. So what they were discussing is how their operations and their duties and responsibilities and many of the things that they do nowadays is different because of the COVID-19 situation. So in 1 year, so many changes happened in their school, with their teachers, with the administrators. This all happened in 1 year. The year 2020 ended, and now we are in year 2021. So with that being said, here is the question that I would like to ask you. If my slide works, sometimes it gets stuck. If it does that, just a second. Here's the question for you. How do you think the year 2040 will look like? Here we are in year 2021. A lot changed in 1 year in year 2020. Now we're talking about 20 years from now. Based on what you have read, based on the trends, based on what the experts are saying, how do you think the year 2040 will look like?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
I think there'll be more use of technology in schools, obviously, and we will look older, obviously.
So you're saying that the usage of technology is going to increase in 20
Yes,
years. Okay.
yes.
Now
I
again,
think
like look at year 2010, and what happened in 2010 was the mass introduction of social media, right? And things completely changed from 2010 to 2020. In 10 years there was an exponential growth to many things in our lives, and now we're talking about 20 years from now with that exponential growth continuing. So a lot is going to change in terms of technology. Go ahead, next person.
I think education is going to be highly, highly personalized and individualized. I think we're going to see merges in sort of putting children in boxes of, year one, year two kind of classrooms, and it'll be more interest-based or, very highly personalized.
Okay, that's a very good point. And we are seeing the trends going that way, that highly individualized or customized education for students. That's a very good point. Okay, what else?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum
I
assalam.
think everything is going to be very much automated, and everything is going to depend on technology, definitely. The high-end cutting-edge technology, depending on the electronics and communication. Everyone is going to use, as we see, now they're using online classes, and I think in later stages also. Maybe smart houses or like smartphones. We are coming up with smart houses or smart equipments, and everything is going to be automated. And there's no need for one to get into, like, what should I say? Like, there's no need of physical involvement. It's all, or it should be all automated.
Okay,
I hope I
automation.
can, yeah,
No,
automation,
very
technology.
good. So, like, for example, you're referring to artificial intelligence, like, taking the lead in many sectors and many services. And I remember it was year 2008. I was traveling, and we're coming out of the parking lot of an airport in the United States. And when you were coming out of the parking lot, there was always like all these different booths that they had a person in them that would take your credit card or your cash to charge you for the parking. And I was thinking, in how many years is it going to take? If we can make sure everyone is on mute, that would be great. I was thinking to myself, how many years is it going to take till all these booths are going to be gone, all these jobs are going to be gone, and all they're going to see is like, little, machine, you run your credit card and you just leave the parking lot. And at that time I was saying, maybe 10 years. It just took 2 years. So today, if you go to the same airport in the United States, there is not a single person there. They're all like, devices over there. And a lot of jobs, are changing. And there is more and more dependency and usage of artificial intelligence, to an extent that Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, comes and says, the number one group of Tesla in the future is going to be AI. I don't care if you have a high school graduate. I don't care even if you went to school for one day. If you know how to code and you're an expert in AI, I will hire you. So that's a very valid point, that many of these jobs are going to be gone because of the artificial intelligence and AI. Speaking like, right now there is a college in Japan that they got rid of all their, I can't remember which department it was, but it was a department in the administration that the students had to speak to a person to get help. Everyone is laid off because they just talk to an automated, like, service that uses artificial intelligence to get their answers. Very good point. Okay, what else? You're 2040.
I have an opinion, please, brother.
Go ahead, please.
So I disagree with technology taking over, because I feel teaching and education is very, very effective when done personally, and in a lot of and it's done online in cases where obviously there's a physical issue like COVID or a pandemic or remote, like someone cannot go overseas to their desired college, for example. It's only done when it's really, really has to be done online. I feel that textbooks will be gone, like the tools of education will change, but nothing can replace the personalized, the face-to-face teaching. So that will still be regarded as the most effective method.
Thank you very much for that point. Now, I don't think our sister, before you, was referring that all the jobs are going to be gone, including teaching. She was just referring that there's going to be more automation in general. I think that's what she was referring to. But I can share some very interesting statistics with you. My own university, when COVID happened and all the classes went online, we gave two choices to students: classes that were fully online without any interaction with the professor, and classes that continued having their class meetings but on Zoom. The percentage of students, or the proportion of students that took the fully asynchronized online class without the interaction and without any live instruction, was 3-1. We thought the same thing. Hey, no, they're gonna go for the live class with the professor. And it was not just undergraduate. This also happened at graduate level. And it was not only our university. When we look at other universities, the same thing happened, which was very interesting to us. Why did this happen? Why didn't they want the live instruction? Were they just lazy? So there's a lot to learn from that. And again, when we talk about technology and advancements, and having access, for example, a professor is teaching. What if all the lectures are online? What if all the questions, all the Q&As, you can click on a question and then you watch the live video of the professor, providing the answer to you. Again, I'm not taking any positions. I'm just saying that a lot is happening, just this 1 year. Now imagine what is going to happen till 20 years from now. But very good point. I agree. Many jobs that require soft skills may still be there, and they're not going to be replaced by technology. And that is the projection. If you look at the experts, they're saying the same thing. Good point. What else?
May I?
Mental health will be going to be there. Mental health issues will be going to be there.
Yes.
Mental health issues are going to, okay, very good. Not just mental health, physical health as well. Imagine if you have this device in your hand 24/7 and your neck is down. I think physical therapists are going to be in demand in the next 10 years. Very good point.
What about social skills?
Very good. What about social skills?
Will there be any social skills in existence the way we are heading right now? I have a 16-year-old. And it's worrying because he's quite happy, like you said, to be online, to be taught by a teacher. But what happens with communications and social interaction with other students and the outside world? Because they seem to be in a little bubble. Literally, they are in a bubble, but in a cocoon now. Will they be able to communicate with each other? Will they be able to solve issues when they see each other? All these social skills that are involved in being together.
Can I give an answer to this lady? Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I was actually thinking of this exact point. I have a 15-year-old as well, and the interesting thing that I'm seeing, the less I ask him to sort of not be on social media or whatever, he's not that much on it anyway, but the less I say, okay, try to be more physically social with your friends. He's like, but mom, these days socializing is on these platforms. What can I do? That is the preferred platform of this generation. And they're actually socializing pretty well in school and then in here on these as well. So it kind of baffles me sometimes.
Very good point. So maybe what we're trying to say is maybe the social norms are going to change, right? So socializing will have a different look to it, and the next generation may or may not. Again, we don't know, because these are trends and trends may change. But I agree with you. We have the same issue in our school in the United States. Our high school students are online, And we're trying to get them to come at least like, to campus once a week to have some social activities, play some games, have fun. They're not coming. They're just sitting home, enjoying, and their parents are forcing them to come. And they're saying like, hey, I really like this online thing. Maybe I should do this next year as well.
Can I add something?
Go ahead, please.
What I feel is the technology and the normal school will go hand in hand, because my kid is very small and she's doing homeschooling as the pandemic is going on. But the more she's staying home, she's feeling more like meeting people. Whenever I say, let's go out, she says, Mom, can we go to someone and meet someone? I want to hug someone. I want to touch someone. So what I feel is, no matter how much technology progresses and increases, the human tendency to socialize and meet people will not go away anywhere. So I believe the technology and normal schooling will go hand in hand. It cannot be all technology. Definitely, like this kind of class we are doing online, we're connecting with people all around the world. We can talk to you. You're not sitting here in India, you are somewhere else, and we can connect. So the parallel thing will go. Both kinds of schooling will go, because it cannot replace the normal schooling, the connect that a kid has with teacher. Because my son, whenever he needs teacher, the teacher holds the hand and tells him, looking into the eye, kid, you have to do this thing, don't worry, everything will be fine, and all. So this cannot be replaced by technology. This hand-in-hand connection, hugging, touching, the motor skills, the fine motor skills that are enriched by the teacher. So all this cannot be replaced by the virtual teaching. Definitely it will increase, it will help in many ways, but it cannot replace the normal schooling. Yeah. This is what I believe.
Now, again, this is based on our values and our belief system and our norms. Will the norms change 20 years from now? That's the question, and we don't know the answer. And
now, can I contribute something actually? Assalamu alaikum. I actually want to say that it's good to be optimistic, but we are actually heading up to a black hole of technology. Now, this black hole is actually asking us to sacrifice our survival, the needs of survival. And I think maybe I'm being pessimistic, but after 20 years, the basic question would be the survival. Meaning just in 2020, we faced such a big havoc of COVID. And maybe after 20 years, we would be basically focusing on the survival, and education would be basically based on survival. So that's what would be ultimately affecting our education system as well. And maybe to the same point I'm coming up, that that would be more customized according to the needs of an individual. So
very good point. Very good point. Now, again, we're having this conversation based on what happened in 1 year with limited technology, what I call limited technology. Imagine how this technology will change in 20 years. And imagine what will happen from now till then. Imagine what happens with the next pandemic, the second pandemic, the third pandemic, the fourth pandemic. Again, we don't know. We just know it's going to be a different tomorrow. If you look at our generation and you compare it to our parents, yeah, a lot changed, but a lot also didn't change, right? And we look ourselves at ourselves and our children, and I don't think any of us can say, well, it's going to be the same thing. Some things are going to change, some things are not going to change. A lot is going to change, and a lot is unknown, because it's going to be a different future. Now, I started with this question, and we're going to shift gears, just for us to start thinking. We're dealing with children in the classroom that are going to have a different tomorrow, that we don't even know how that tomorrow is going to look like, right? I am having difficulty going to my next.
Say,
go ahead, please. Go ahead.
I just want to say, I think as long as humans exist, there's going to be some form of human interaction. I think the main question is, how do we reinvent, reimagine ourselves so that we stay current? because we see these changes even in our own homes with our children, how quickly we can outdate ourselves if we don't remain current. And I think this is perhaps even more worrisome when we're thinking about the Islamic education, because, you know, let alone all the media and all the negative propaganda, and that it's not such a cool thing to be a Muslim and to propagate Islam. Now imagine 20 years from now. I mean, these are battles we're having now with our children in our own homes. We're not even talking about the Islamic schools, at our homes. And so I'm really hoping this session today and these sessions we're having are going to address this issue of how do we stay current and valid and legitimate in a world where everything is at the reach of your fingertips. And there are so many truths and you know, so much fake news, and you know, there's all these happenings. How does Islam sustain its place in this kind of
Very good point. May Allah bless you, sister. You just skipped 10 slides, went to slide 11. Very good. Inshallah. Now, maybe one more comment, and inshallah, after that, we will continue.
I wanted to say that all the best brains will be available to us, and all the best brains with regards to Islam also, and we can teach people against Islamophobia without getting beaten on this online.
Now, inshallah,
may I add on something?
Okay, maybe if it's okay, this will be the last comment because I really need to move on. I haven't even started the workshop, so go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think technology has its pros and cons. The main part is we need to have a balance of technology, and during this pandemic, a lot of responsibility lies in the hands of parents actually to bring that balance. So as a parent of a teenager, we do face these problems with the social media being a big boom these days, but definitely it is easy to handle, as parallelly it is as tough as possible. So, you know, the kind of Islam we have today, it's a boon for us. It shall help us in handling technology and the pros of the technology easier compared to other people around the world. So probably the balance is the key, I think, in handling technology.
Thank you very much, sister. So now, when we're talking about the future that we don't know, what skills do these children need to have to be able to be successful in that year? That's a question that many educators are thinking about. Okay, what is it that they need to learn in school? What is it that we can do now to prepare them for that tomorrow that's going to be different? And that's a very important question for all of us to ponder about. Because when we talk about this, you know, immediately people start thinking about technology, academics, but alhamdulillah, this group is a different group. And we didn't just think about technology and academics. We started thinking about social issues. We talked about religious issues, spiritual issues, the holistic development of the child, not just the cognitive or the intellectual, but the other aspects to education, physical aspect, social, emotional, spiritual. So now, if we look at it that way, you know, I'm teaching to children that they're going to have a different tomorrow. And is what I'm teaching relevant to what they need to prepare for tomorrow? That's a question that all of us need to ask. You know, let me share a reflection with you. Due to the pandemic, many schools in the United States and around the world, by the way, like, you know, there is a network of Islamic schools around the world, from Australia, like, you know, to Indonesia, to Middle East, to Africa, Europe, North America, South America, that I'm part of that network as a member of Secretariat. And they're having the same conversations, like, you know, and we're sharing our stories, and all of us are saying the same thing. There were some things that this year, because of COVID, we didn't do. Schools that had to be face-to-face, or they chose to be face-to-face, some were forced because of the governments, some had the choice. regardless, a lot of new COVID-19 safety preventative measures were introduced that reduced instruction time. So all of us had to redo our schedule to have less English, less math, less science, less social studies. And we thought, oh my God, the world is going to end. And after a year, we looked back and said, no, the world didn't end. Actually, not a lot was lost. Even if you look at the statistics in the United States, they were saying up to 40% of learning is going to be lost. That's what they said in summer of 2020. Now that number has been reduced to 15 to 20%. For private schools, we didn't lose much. Interestingly, we gained a lot because we started doing things that we were not doing in the past. We're focusing more on the social, emotional needs of the children. We're focusing more on their mental health. We're focusing more on their spiritual needs, on their physical needs. And now we see, wow, we want to continue this even after the pandemic. Not just our school, but like almost any school that I'm talking to. So it made us think many of the things that we thought are a must are really not a must. When UC Berkeley thought that, hey, having the SAT as an entrance exam is a must, and COVID forced them not to do it, and now they're saying, it's not a must. Guess what? We're not going to do SAT anymore. So again, we have to constantly question what we're doing. Why are we doing it? Is it really a necessity? Is it really a necessity for these children for 20 years from now? We don't know. So if you look at it that way, curriculum is a living document. It must change based on the needs, the future needs of the children, not their current needs, their future needs. So with that introduction, we have to ask ourselves questions like this. How do we teach students how to learn? Okay, there's a difference to teach them math than to teach them how to learn. How do we teach them how to learn? How do we teach them concepts such as endurance? How do we teach that? I mean, let me just pause on this. You're educators. How do you teach this concept to your children? In your schools, how do you teach this concept? You want students to have endurance, right? You want them to study all the time, not just the night before the exam. Our students are really good at cramming the night before the exam, but they're not good at doing something for a long period of time. At least in the United States. I don't know about India, Australia, and other places. How do we teach this skill to our students? Any thoughts on that?
Can I say something?
Go ahead, please.
Assalamu alaikum. I very much agree, and I like the point, like what we were doing before. Alhamdulillah, we are doing more in this, we are running care center, and we find many students, and they are taking interest, and the e-technology is new for them, and we are paying individual attention, and also we are making them self-dependent. They are not dependent on the teachers like before in the live class they are. We are giving them material, and they like, even in the rural areas, they like to do it, and they are keen to attend the classes, and some net issues are there, but alhamdulillah, it is going very smooth, inshallah, and we can carry on this way, and Allah will send some more, opportunities. And according to Maula Ali, when the time, according to that, teach your kids. The time arrived, and don't be upset and don't be sad about what you were doing. And Allah plans is the best.
May Allah bless you. May Allah bless you. Now, the catch to this beautiful hadith of Hazrat Ali alayhi salam is, teach them based on the needs of the time. Now we're talking teaching them based on the needs of the future. And you're absolutely right. These are very good points. That makes us think, hey, we need to do things a little bit differently to help these children to, inshallah, be better prepared for the future. So inshallah, they become stronger Muslims. They have like, stronger identity. They become true soldiers of the Imam of the time. They can differentiate between right and wrong. They can, at a time, look at the question number 4. Haqq and batil have mixed so much. You look at like, even the arguments, like and the scientific arguments, there's so much right in it, but the wrong is there as well. That you say, is this science or is this pseudoscience? I don't know. Sometimes even like we get mixed up. Now, this mixing of haqq and batil is gonna continue increasing more and more and more. How do we prepare children to identify what is haqq and what is batil, what is right and what is wrong? Let me provide one more point, and I think a sister wanted to say something. So, for example, in the Islamic curriculum, we teach children about the concept of iman. How much do we teach them about the concept of kufr? How much do they know about kufr? These are questions for all of us to think about. We teach them a lot about Ahlul Bayt, which is really good. Do we also teach them, like when we talk about like, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, do we also talk to them about Shamr? Okay, let's learn the life of Shamr today. Let me talk about Shamr and the war of Siffin when he was actually in the army of Imam Ali. And what happened to Shamr that he changed? Or maybe he didn't change. Maybe Shamr was like that from the beginning. But how much do we teach this stuff to our children that they can understand? This is haqq, this is batil. This is iman, this is kufr. This is right, this is wrong. Go ahead, sister, you wanted to add a point.
Yeah, almost what you're saying, as much as we have to be up to date in technology, I as a parent, as well as a madrasa teacher, feel that I have to be aware myself of what is out there. So I have to be well informed, and I have to be able to differentiate myself for me to teach them. But I have to start teaching them now. And it's surprising. I have an argument with my son when we're constantly fighting or arguing rather about what is fake news and what isn't. And what is fake news to me may not be fake news to him because he's reading up as well. And we could be reading up different articles, different things. And it's a struggle as a parent, but I also feel that it's a challenge. I wouldn't say it's a struggle, it's a challenge for parents and teachers to be aware of what is out there for us to teach them. We have to keep advanced. We have to keep on reading and thinking and talking to people to find out what is going on.
Very good point, sister. By the way, there is a good documentary called The Social Dilemma. The Social Dilemma. It's on Netflix. And I don't know if Sheikh Salim or Maulana Salim Yusuf Ali has already had the session with you all, but he was the one who recommended this documentary to me. And exactly what you said in that documentary, that social media on purpose feeds like, different versions of reality to different people or who have two different views on something. And that's what you see, like, maybe I believe in something so strongly because everything that I've read on social media backs that up. And when you search the same thing, maybe what you're seeing on the social media is going to be completely different. So I think I'm right and you're wrong. And you think you're right and I'm wrong. By the way, that's a very cool documentary. I highly recommend that you watch that. But again, you even think about the end of times, everything that we learned in the ahadith about the what they call the ayat hatmi of the return of the Imam. When they talk, they don't just talk about Yamani, they talk about Sufyani as well. They don't just talk about the person who's good, they talk about the person who's bad as well. And when you learn about the ahadith that talks about Sufyani, especially like there's a lot of ahadith that comes from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam that people think that Sufyani is right. They truly believe in this, like, this movement, that this is the right movement, which means they cannot differentiate between the right and the wrong, the haqq and the batil, because of so much mixing that has happened. So, go ahead.
Sorry. So,
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. Can I say something?
Go ahead, sister.
Questions. Actually, the last I would answer all these questions how much I can understand according to my understanding. From the last question, to have hikmah, wisdom. So Maula Ali addressed this question in a way that he said that a wise person is the one who remembers the experiences. Now, to remember experiences that you have or the other people have is wisdom. So this is how we are actually talking about learning too, how to show your students or your children around to what are you giving them, how are you enriching them in their experiences, like how you're showing your character, how you're showing yourself, and how you are actually trying to acquaint them. So that would actually contribute in their life. This is what is learning, and that would actually contribute to their endurance also, and everything between right and wrong, differentiation and all. So this is what I
Very good
think.
point. Now, we have that beautiful verse in Surah Al-Jumu'ah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. So يتلو عليهم آياته. It's talking about the roles and the responsibilities of the Anbiya, of the prophets. يتلو عليهم آياته. That they recite and they show the signs of Allah to people. وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, and they purify them. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. At the end of it, the last thing, if you look at Quran, everything is sequential. If it says like, A and B, there's a reason A comes before B, okay? So you look at the sequence, the last thing is the prophets teach wisdom to people. How do we teach wisdom to people? And you're right, Ahlul Bayt, show us, and they talk about different ways that we can teach wisdom. But then I'm stuck in, hey, I'm just a math teacher, hey, this is not about me. I'm just here to teach you about math. Is that our responsibility as an educator, just to teach math? What about the wisdom part? Because we don't have a class called wisdom, right? We don't have a subject, hey, today we're going to learn about wisdom. What about the previous one, adab? I'm originally from Iran, and the elementary school in Farsi is called Dabistan, which is short for Adabistan. So children go to elementary school to learn adab. And if you look at the concept of adab in Islam, it's not just manners, it's way more than that. How do we teach this concept of adab to children? When we're just focusing on math, science, social studies, English. So you look at it this way. You have curriculum, we have pedagogy, and we have assessment. Curriculum is, what are they teaching? What are they learning? The content. The reality of the game is, as far as I know, India is the same thing, that you don't have much control over the curriculum of a full-time school. It is state mandated. The same thing with in Australia, as much as I know. Okay? In the United States, things are a little bit better here. But in the United Kingdom, same issue. Many countries, if you are a school and you want to be recognized by the government, you have to follow the curriculum. I remember one of the administrators in the only Islamic school that exists in UK was telling me that when the state inspector came to their elementary school, said, why don't you have a book about homosexuality in the library for your elementary kids? They have to be exposed to it. That's a standard. That must happen. In some countries, it's like that. In some countries, like in the United States and California, the concept of having a mom and mom or dad and dad instead of a mom and dad is in the storybooks, required for kindergarten students to learn. And again, our parents who never went to a public school in the United States, they're refugees or they're immigrants, they came here, or maybe they did, but they went to a kindergarten 20, 30, 40 years ago, and now things have changed. They don't even know what's happening to their children. So we have this issue with curriculum, right? That we don't have much control over, unfortunately, in full-time schools. Well, pedagogy is how you teach them. And yes, you have a lot of control over that. And that is where we can make a difference. All of us, we can make a difference on how we teach the same concept You know, we have something called a formal curriculum, and there's an informal or hidden curriculum. And then there's something called null curriculum. Null curriculum is something that is intentionally taken out from the curriculum. When you look at science books in the United States or in the West, even Australia is the same thing. God has been taken out from the science books. It's a secular book. So you can teach biology from a God-centric lens or a fully secular lens. That is where we can make a difference. Because whenever I have these workshops, teachers tell me, brother, we can't change the curriculum. I understand that, but you can change how you teach the curriculum. And that's what I want to talk about a little bit today. And then the concept of assessment. So our curriculum is based on standards. Yes, in Norway and Finland is based on skills and competencies. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they say A, B, C, D need to be taught, right or wrong. So you know in biology or in math, A, B, C, D must be taught, right? In the US, we really push for standard-based learning, which we know is wrong. You know, you look at the data, and again, where do standards come from? From the curriculum. So you have curriculum, and then you have standards. So what you cover in math in first grade, that's the standard for first grade. What you cover in terms of like, you know, physics in high school, those are standards set by your government, set by your Ministry of Education when it comes to physics. And the argument is standards need to be there. It helps to guide the teacher. It helps us measure achievement. It helps us to ensure all students are prepared for success, blah, 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 all that stuff. Okay. In the US, you know, they really push for standards. Well, let's see where they got them, where that has gotten them. You look at this chart, it's a very interesting chart. Hours per year spent teaching. So in the United States, teachers teach a lot. Most of their time is spent teaching. So I would say more than 90% of their time is teaching. Many countries are like that, but some countries are way less than that. So there's a heavy focus on we need to spend more instruction time with these teachers in class so the students can learn more. Okay. You look at Montessori, you have a 3-hour block. You look at the United States, it's a 7-hour block. The kids are, you know, literally in the classroom for almost 6 hours a day. So again, that's another graph that we can look at. How many hours per week do teachers spend teaching? Singapore, South Korea, much less than the US. Australia, somewhere in the middle. I don't have India, unfortunately. Testing. In the US, we test kids to death. So Finland, 0. By the way, you look at like, you know, charts of comparing, you see Finland like, you know, way ahead of the US in many aspects. So assessment time is also systematic in the US. Delivery time is systematic. You know, what does a teaching week look like for an average teacher? Look at the US, look at Singapore. High school teacher, like that, for example, that's a high school math teacher. Most of their time is prep in Singapore. In the United States, most of it is teaching, which means that poor teacher is teaching like, you know, math to 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, another section of 11th grade. They're teaching geometry, they're teaching calculus. They don't have much time to prep. What are the results of a system like this that is so standard-based? The US is the flag bearer for standard-based teaching. In reading, we're way behind. In science, we're more behind. In math, we're even more behind. So standard-based learning didn't get US that far. And they know it. And they're not doing anything about it. When a teacher comes to my university and we're training them to become a teacher, we're still teaching them the same things. Standards, lesson plans. This is like, you know, how your class should look like. Everything is standardized. standardized teaching, standardized curriculum, standardized pedagogy, because the curriculum actually, for example, the curriculum that we use for our high school requires 2 hours of instruction every day for elementary kids. 2 hours. And it breaks these 2 hours into segments. You do this, then you do this, 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here, 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here. So the teacher is always catching up to to make sure they finish the curriculum. That is based on standards. Again, most teachers don't have a say in the curriculum. But at least we can agree there's something wrong with this. Teaching just to cover the standards doesn't help us with everything that we've discussed so far. Do you agree? If everything we're doing in the class is to cover those standards, we will not be able to talk about adab, wisdom, haq, batil, adam. All that stuff goes away, right? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Sheikh, may I?
Go ahead, please.
Unfortunately, I find that the school, the World Federation has adopted the MCE, which is a syllabus. And so we're following the same concept of the schools. So all of us have to follow the same syllabus at the same time, cover it within a certain time and whatever. It becomes quite a challenge when you want to sit down sometimes and say, okay, there's an issue or a question that's raised by a student which is not necessarily directly concerned with the topic you're teaching, but you need to sit down and say, okay, let me spend 5 minutes talking to this child. He needs a little bit more time, a little bit more discussion. So we're in the same sort of situation as a school is, unfortunately.
Very good point. I remember my father. My father was a full professor in economics. He got his PhD from University of Pennsylvania. And he always used to teach me, in class, I don't teach economics. I teach a way of life. I never understood that. Like, what do you mean? I mean, you're teaching economics. No, I'm teaching more than economics. And now, when I became an educator, I understand that. A math teacher is not just a math teacher. A science teacher is not just a science teacher. I remember 5 years ago, or 4 years ago, actually, in our school, when I joined Rise Academy, we had a staff meeting at the beginning of the year. I asked the staff, raise your hand if you're an Islamic studies teacher. 2 or 3 teachers raised their hand. Everyone else said, hey, I'm not an Islamic studies teacher. I don't teach that. We worked a lot on it. After 4 years, at the beginning of this year, when I asked, raise your hand if you're an Islamic studies teacher, everyone raised their hand. Because now they understand what does it mean to be an Islamic studies teacher. You can teach science from the lens of Islam. You can teach math from the lens of Islam. Because what does an Islamic study and teacher do? We're talking about the aqa'id and the belief system of the children. If all of us are helping the children to shape that belief system, all of us are Islamic studies teacher. Yes, we're not a fiqh teacher. We're not teaching jurisprudence, but we're helping them see Allah in nature. We're helping them to see Allah and see haqq and batil in social studies. We're teaching them the concept of order and logic and math so they can use the same skills to prove to themselves that Allah exists when they start questioning the existence of Allah in high school, which is, many high school students do that. We're not just an English teacher or a science teacher or a math teacher. So far, we've discussed 3 concepts. Concept number 1, these children are going to have a different future that we don't know how it's going to look like, but we know it's going to look so different. 2, we discussed the standard-based curriculum doesn't really prepare them for that future or that tomorrow that is unknown. And, that's just, there's empirical evidence to prove that. That's not someone's opinion. That's not my opinion. 3rd is, we discussed that, hey, you as a Muslim, even if you're not teaching in an Islamic school, let's assume you're teaching in a government-based, secular, school, but you teach math. you can teach it differently. You can cover the same curriculum using a different pedagogy. And that is what we're trying to talk about today. So when we talk about innovative pedagogy, people think, oh, I'm going to create, show this like, new innovative technique on how you can become a better teacher. No. This innovation really is not an innovation. It's going back to our roots as a human being, going back to our roots as a Muslim, going back to our roots, the fitri roots, teaching based on the fitrat of the children. And if we can teach math based on the fitrat of the children, we are doing what we're supposed to be doing. So with that being said,
just one thing, just a kind of like a question, comment. So what you're saying is that it's how we deal with the curriculum that's important. It's not really, I mean, the curriculum, different countries or different schools are going to follow different curriculum. But what's important is how we deal with it, how we present it to our students.
Absolutely. And we're going to provide some examples of that today. You go to your class as an educator. You're an administrator in a school. What is the goal? What is the goal? What is your goal? What is your goal, by the way? I'm just interested to know. What is your goal?
Better human being.
To what?
To make them better human beings.
To make them better human beings. So how do we do that? By teaching math.
We can drag their mind toward, every time, whatever subject we are teaching. Just suppose I am a biology, chemistry teacher, I am teaching them cell. And then they're putting everything, Allah is there in their mind and how it is work, how the cell, mitochondria and all these small, cell organelles are working together. And such a good compatibility is there in each system. They are running accordingly. So they are definitely, we can to mend their mind toward the Allah's creation and Allah's, greatness. And they will be thankful and they will try to become good, inshallah. This is my...
May Allah bless you. Very, very good point. May Allah bless you. Okay. Yeah. Others. What is the goal of your classroom? When you enter your classroom, what is your goal? What are you trying to achieve that day and every day?
Assalamu alaikum.
Children to know.
Assalamu alaikum. My goal will be to make the students have better akhlaq, be more truthful, good manners, good to the parents, like the things that we're going through every single day. Like you look at some students or most of the kids these days, they're lacking manners, bad behavior, just basic things, but just to make it better, like better manners.
Now, that's a good point. Now, would you be okay if they have good akhlaq, but they don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
No, of course not. But being in an Islamic school, them being there, obviously they believe in Allah. We just have to make the belief more stronger. Very
good. So now you added something else. You said akhlaq and make their belief stronger, because we all know their kids, their students who went to Islamic schools who are today, they're atheists. We all know stories of that. We know kids who went to Islamic schools and non-Islamic schools, and they changed their gender. They're gay, they're lesbian. We know that's the reality of many schools, whether they're Islamic or not. So the sister brings up a very good point. Akhlaq and build a stronger foundation, stronger belief system. Very good. What else?
Brother Nooh, I feel that, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Madrasa. So I feel that as Quran tells us, the goal of our existence is to be tested eventually in good and bad deeds. So we need to instill that goal actively in their mind. That is the form of worship Allah expects from us, that we are accountable to Him. And whatever subjects we are teaching, we need to actively link it to that goal. Whatever subject, whatever topic, whatever is our discussion, we need to form a link in their minds how we will be accountable with that subject. So for example, you gave an example of if we teach them maths, how they will help them in their religion or, be a better human being. So it can instill honesty, and for their honesty, they're, accountable to Allah. For example, it can teach them how to be a scientist, and explore Allah's signs eventually. So yeah, so we need to link. I feel that is our responsibility.
Very good.
I think
I've taught for about 25 years in the madrasa, and I started off with the very young ones, and I'm now teaching 12 to 13 years. It was easier, I think, teaching the younger ones about Allah because they're more adaptable and they will not question you so much. The older ones, maybe 7-10 years ago, I'd get frustrated with them, but now I've learned to be empathetic with them. You have to empathize with them because they're surrounded by so many more challenges than I was. So you have to empathize with them to be able to teach them the love of Allah and everything. That's my personal goal, I think. When I go into a classroom, I'm more empathetic on every day with them. Or I try to be.
Thank you very much, sister.
Assalamu alaikum. My goal is just like, because I deal with early childhood educators, like early childhood kids, like towards the kindergarten and in madrasa. So what my concept is, just like, I don't go for quantity. It's just like I go for quality. Like I don't need to rush for, okay, I need to finish this chapter so that the kids can go and move to the next chapter. What my basic goal is when I go to the class, even though I'm doing both of the schools at this point, the madrasa as well, the Islamic school as well, and to the English school as well, like teaching the Aussie children and stuff. So my concept is just to get them the concept, start with the basic concept. So in madrasa, I do the same thing, that I don't go for this much amount of chapter I have to do it. I go for with the basic stuff. Okay, teach them, give them a small concept and give them a question to think, or give them something so that they can think, oh, my teacher has told me this thing, and give them, make them learn through play-based learning, and on top of it with the stories as well, because the stories and visualization makes the children remember the thing more better than we just give them chapter to read or something like that. So this is what my objective is. When I get out of the class, my children should know that what is the concept of not saying lie, or what we have to believe, who is watching us, even though if there's nobody here and I'm stealing someone's pencils or sharpeners or something, but there is Allah who is watching me. So this is what my objective is if I do the madrasa teaching and stuff.
Alhamdulillah, we're faced with different realities. I'm really keen to understand because, you know, if you're living in an environment where you don't necessarily have the luxury of attending sort of like an Islamic school or surrounded by an Islamic environment, and you're constantly faced with people who have very good akhlaq, because I think akhlaq is probably the easier part to teach, but then how do you inculcate that strong belief system in a completely secular environment? And that, I think, is the bigger battle for us Muslims. So I'm really hoping we're
regarding that point,
maybe one more comment, and because our time is limited, sister, go ahead, and after
one
that,
of the
inshallah,
goals,
we'll continue.
I'm actually an Islamic, we have a Saturday Islamic school. Sorry, I just wanted to let you know. One of the things that I have wanted to do right at the start and still try to do with all the students and my teachers too, is the concept of all these kids that go to public school, they should have a place to come to on Saturday where they feel that they belong, and to create that sense of belonging in them by creating an environment which is, you know, good to come to, fun to come to first, and then that should be, I feel that should be a stepping stone. Once they feel that sense of belonging, then we build the concepts of our beliefs and akhlaq and all the other things.
So what I can share with you, let's keep the questions for the end, like, you know, if it's okay, like, you know, I'm going to try to wrap this up and then provide 2 examples, and then we have time for questions at the end. What I can share with you is based on, like, you know, 20 years of research, talking to scholars, to educators, to religious scholars. You know, this concept of the 3 sevens, the first 7 years, the second 7 years, and the third 7 years. What came out of that research, and this is actually another workshop, you know, but since this issue came up, like, you know, I can just address this and move on. The first 7 years of the child, if we can really focus on creating the concept of hubb, love of Allah, love of Ahlul Bayt, love of Quran. There's a difference between love of Quran and memorizing Quran. Love of Allah. Allah is merciful. Allah loves you. Allah created the rain. Allah. Let me give you an example. I remember the first time that, it's a scholar gave me this suggestion. And the first time I took my daughter to the shrine of Imam Raza alayhi salam, she was 2 years old. I specifically booked the tickets that we get there on the day of the Milad of Imam Raza. I had prepared an Eid, a gift for her, wrapped it. She didn't know about this. Before I entered the shrine, I went to this khadim and I said, can you please give this Eid to my daughter and say, this is an Eid or gift from Imam Raza to you. So, we went to the ziyarah on our way, coming out. I went to this khadim, and the khadim, talked to my daughter and gave the gift to my daughter. My daughter never forgets that she got a gift, an Eid from Imam Raza. And that love for Imam Raza is there. I mean, she just, every day, we have a routine. Part of that routine is I play a little nasheed about Imam Raza. She says, Salam Imam Raza. I hope I can see you soon. This just personal relationship that she has from Imam Raza, with Imam Raza. If we can just make sure that children have the love of Allah, but this has to be done systematically. We don't just do it Allah loves you. It doesn't work like that. Many teachers, in the name of teaching Quran, they destroy the love of Quran in our children at a young age. You didn't memorize Surah An-Nas. You were supposed to memorize Surah An-Nas. Come on. Just the love of Quran. We alhamdulillah, we're blessed to have an awesome Quran teacher, Maulana Wahidi. He's a hafiz of Quran. When I enter when I go to observe the Quran class for the kindergarten, he's playing with them. He's just making songs. They're laughing. They're having a blast. When I ask my daughter, now, she's 8, who's your favorite teacher? What's your favorite subject? Maulana Wahidi Quran. That class is just so much fun. The love of Quran, the love of Allah, the love of Ahlul Bayt. First 7 years. The next 7 years, you start talking about Iman, Aqidah, our belief system, and you slowly introduce kufr with it as well. And then the third 7 years, you focus on this concept of differentiating between haqq and batil. Again, this by itself, what I just said in the last 2 minutes, is like a 3-hour workshop for another day. But since this came up, and this, you can see it with this picture that that's on the slide. But I can wrap it up by this: the goal of our education is to make children become abd of Allah. Khalas, it's that, it's nothing else. That they become a true servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when I'm teaching math, that is my goal. When I'm teaching science, that is my goal. When I'm teaching whatever subject, full-time school, weekend school, doesn't matter. If I'm a mentor, it doesn't matter. If I'm the teacher, it doesn't matter. If I'm the parent, it doesn't matter. The goal is one: to make sure they become a good servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we talk to students and we say, our goal is that inshallah we go to heaven. So just from that lens, that this 7-year-old kid, 8-year-old kid, 10-year-old kid, hey, I'm supposed to go to heaven. I'm here to go to heaven. You just talked about the concept of ma'ad. That one sentence, I'm here to go to heaven, is the concept of ma'ad. And then you start with that and you build on it slowly. So with that being said, again, this has nothing to do with the curriculum. You can have a fully secular curriculum, but when you talk to children, you constantly remind them, hey, our goal is to go to heaven, to Jannah, not here. You constantly bring Allah into the picture, things change. So, let me see what time it is. We got 19 minutes. So, here is an egg. you may be covering the concept of egg, and you're talking about like the science behind that. The book will say there are two ways that like newborn animals come into the world. Either the mother lays it in an egg where it can continue to grow before hatching, which means they're still incomplete in the egg, or it stays inside its mother until emerging as a more fully formed, like newborn, the janin and all that complete. Okay, this is what the book says. Immediately you change that. It says Allah has created two ways for a newborn animal to come into the world. You made Allah the fa'il, the doer. Allah has done this. Allah, that's the first thing that we all need to do. Bring Allah to the picture, because the curriculum, as one sister said earlier, is designed in a way to take Allah out of the picture. That's pedagogy. Nobody's told you cannot bring Allah into the picture. You're still teaching about the egg. You're just saying Allah created these two ways. That's the first point. You don't stop there. Now we get into the akhlaq. Now we get into the adab. Now we get into the wisdom. Okay, children, like, my friends, let's talk about this. When you eat an egg, again, maybe you don't want to do it with the younger children because they will stop eating an egg, but, you talk to the high school students, that egg had the potential to become a chicken, right? That egg had the potential to become a chicken. Of course, like we know that scientifically, like they make sure like that egg never becomes a chicken, but that egg, if you just go an organic egg, the chicken has laid an egg, you take it and you eat it as your breakfast. If you had not touched it, and the chicken would continue laying on it, eventually would have become an egg. So this egg had a potential to become something more complete. And then you can easily tie this to the concept of our decisions, our ideas. Sometimes we have ideas. This is where you go off the curriculum. Nobody tells you can't do it. You just have to make time for it. We have all these ideas, and sometimes we make immature decisions, right? But if we just spend some time, just like the egg needs more time to become the chicken, we can make this idea more complete. At a time that children are just impulsive, decision makers. The next generation, as we discussed earlier, the social media is this, they want instant gratification, right? They have to make the decision right there. Their shopping trends show this. You're teaching them, okay, we make decisions in 2 steps. First, we think, we plan, some time goes, and then we make the decision. And again, you can continue this conversation and take it to so many different ways that you want. You can talk about marriage. You can talk about choosing a major, when you're doing counseling in high school. It all started with the chicken. This was not part of the curriculum, but you can bring it in. So first, you bring Allah. Second, you talk about the ayat, the lesson that you can learn from this. You look at the world around us. We can learn so much from the nature. We don't. We stick to the standard and the curriculum. We move from this concept because we have to talk about the next concept. All you have to do is just bring Allah into it and spend 5 minutes to talk about this. Let me bring you and talk about another example. The fox. You're talking about the dog family, and talk about hunting and how they hunt differently, again, depending on which grade that you're living. I'm just bringing an example to you. And you talk about the fox. It's like, okay, well, fox is not as strong as a wolf or the dog. The canine teeth is not even as strong. So they're not really good hunters. That is their weakness. How do they hunt? Show them a clip on YouTube where the fox is playing dead. There's actually a very interesting clip about that. Even the BBC, that what is it called, Earth or Planet Earth, that documentaries, they have a section about this. That it plays dead, the prey gets to it, and then the fox hunts it. Okay, so nobody said you need to cover this. Okay? You were just talking about the dog family and hunting and all that. There's a picture of fox in the book, and you just bank on that. You go from there. You talk about the fox. Hey, kids, let's just talk about the fox for a few minutes. Fox has a weakness compared to other dogs, but it uses its intellect, uses a strategy to overcome the weakness. Isn't that the story of all of our teens? They have all these weaknesses, and they make the weakness so big and just affects their world. The peer pressure, someone talks about their nose, someone talks about whatever, like, they go crazy. We did this, actually, I did this in one of the classes that I teach. I told the students, can you make a list of your weaknesses? By the way, this is confidential, you don't show it to me, just keep it to yourself. After that, destroyed like the piece of paper, but just can you just tell me how many, if you're if it's okay, a list of 20 weaknesses. I don't like my height, my this, my that, my parents, I don't know, the way I look, the color of my skin. Someone said my hijab, someone said my masjid, my religion. Some people actually, when we talked about, some of these kids later on, it depends on how comfortable you are with the students. With high school kids, if they open up to you, it's just mind-blowing. I said, okay, very good. Make a list of your strengths. The list went from average 20 to 5 or 6. They couldn't identify their strengths. Weaknesses were so big to them, but strengths were so little. Then I asked, okay, can you list your potential strengths that you may have in the future that you haven't identified yet? 1 or 2. So that is an issue. That is an issue. That all they see is the weakness. All they see is the weakness. And I remember, we were talking about, I was teaching a class in social studies to our 7th graders. We talked about this concept of Great Britain. And I said, guys, wait a minute. Let's look at Great Britain and the map. It's a little island. It's very small. Why do we say Great Britain, but we never say Great India? I mean, look at the size of India. That's Great India, Great Australia, Great Britain. And we're talking about colonization and what they did. What they did in Afghanistan with the Great Game and the buffer, using it as a buffer with the Russian, what they did in India and all that. They used their weakness of not having a lot of land, a lot of resources. And they use the fox strategy. Actually, in Persian, Great Britain is known as the old fox, to colonize and take the resources of all these countries, and they call themselves the Great Britain. This was not in the curriculum. The curriculum only talked about the word Great Britain. The curriculum just showed a picture of fox. I'm just providing examples of how you can use the current curriculum that you have in a different way. Bring Allah into the picture. This is a God-centric approach. Talk about the hikmat of his signs. The nature is the sign of Allah, right? You look at Surah Al-Rum, talks about the signs of Allah. The cloud, the water, the rain. And then you're talking about the water life cycle. It comes from the ocean, it goes back to the ocean. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. That was not in the curriculum. You just bring it in. This we can do. This you're capable of doing, but we're not doing. When I talk about pedagogy, this is what I mean. You can make the difference by bringing Allah into the picture, by talking about the hikmats of the signs of Allah. What can we learn from the fox? To overcome our weaknesses. I'm a fox, you're a fox, we have these weaknesses. If a teacher can talk about, hey, when I was your age, I had this weakness, and let me tell you how I overcame that weakness. We never do that. We wait for a weakness to become an issue. 2 kids start beating up each other, and then we react, okay, behavior, policy, discipline, and all that. We don't take the proactive approach. say, hey, but that weakness is just, it's just a weakness, and you can overcome it. Your strengths are more than your weaknesses. Use your strengths to overcome the weaknesses. We don't do that. Okay, let me stop at this point. We only have 14 minutes left, so I will open it up to questions. There's a lot that we covered, but again, I hope that this made you think and made you reflect on what you do in the classroom and how you do it. Questions?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Before we ask the questions, please raise your hand because we do have a lot of people and we have to end the session before 9:30 p.m. here, which is less than 15 minutes, 14 minutes. So, and then we'll go according to the row, inshallah. Sister, yes, Yusreen Lotan.
Yes, assalamu alaikum. I've just got a bit of clarification, if that's possible. So curriculums are designed, controlled, and planned by governments. Obviously, there's an economic drive behind it, like the previous picture we saw. And I have the impression that teachers in public school, they have their hands tied. They're not really able to bring God perspectives into the classroom. They have children who will go back home and say, oh, we learned that today. And if they are, say, for example, from an atheist household, then the parents go back to the principal and say, all right, this is what the teacher said today. Does that mean that you promote a God-centered view in your classrooms? And this, I think this is quite prevalent in most public schools, whether in Australia only or overseas. And to me, that was the reason why I decided to homeschool my children for a while at least. And for example, would learn about Aboriginal culture, and I would explain to them, did you know that in the Quran, there's a verse that talks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying that he has created nations and tribes so we can get to know each other. So it made so much sense to be able to do that in that setting. But the majority of our Muslim children who go to public school, they just can't get that exposure. And so how can we balance that? How can we maybe in madrasa teaching, is it time to bring in science concepts, geography concepts that they learn at school and say, well, let's talk about the water cycle. So suddenly what they've learned at school at year 3, year 4, year 5 is now being given a different perspective in madrasa from a different lens, like you said.
Very good point, sister. You're absolutely right. And some countries, if a teacher is working in a secular public school, they're not allowed to bring God into the picture. Now, I'm assuming that most teachers who are in this session are teaching, and actually, I shouldn't make that assumption. So if you are working in a school like that, yes, if you can't do it, you can't do it. So that's why, maybe you skip the top layer and you talk about the hikmat and what we can learn. And that's why sometimes I hear we're here to teach akhlaq to them, because we can do it and nobody's going to have an issue with that. That's called character education. Absolutely right. Now, I hope that we can support our Islamic schools in a way that, because in Islamic schools, even in Australia, you're allowed to do it. In a public school, you can't, but in an Islamic school that is following the same state's mandated curriculum, you can. So when I was providing this example, I was talking about the math teacher who is teaching math in an Islamic school. Okay. Now, you bring up a good point that, in the madrasas, when the weekend Islamic schools, we have to take a different approach, and you're absolutely right. Even the way we teach akhlaq, again, our time is very limited, but there is a difference. Let me give you an example. We can teach hasad, say, hey, hasad is bad, jealousy is bad because God said so. Some other people say, no, jealousy is bad because it makes you depressed. So again, this is all about you. And this is the individualism that, hey, don't be jealous because at the end of the day, it hurts you. Or we can take the concept, it's called akhlaq tawhidi, that even you teach akhlaq from the lens of Allah. Open it. What is jealousy? Jealousy is me questioning why I don't have something that someone else has. I'm questioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're related to Allah. Now, this is going to be a different conversation. And like, you know, let's assume before that, you were saying like, you know, the Namrud, like he questioned Allah. And, you know, he went to fight Allah. And he went on top of this, you know, structure. And he got the arrow. And he shot the arrow to God. He was questioning and challenging God. When you become jealous, you're challenging God. All you have to do is show that, like, you know, if you have showed the video of Namrud shooting the arrow, all you have to say is, what we're doing is we are shooting the arrow. That's a different way of teaching hasad. All we do is we bring a verse of Quran and we bring a hadith. Hasad is bad. Do it from the lens of Allah and see how it's going to be different. Very good point, sister. I hope this clarifies.
Thank you.
Sister Asima, Zainab.
Yes, I wanted to ask you this question. When we teach a lot of things in madrasa, generally the concept is this is our normal life and this is our madrasa life. Whatever we do in madrasa stays in madrasa. And generally, it's not like we cannot apply all these things in our normal life when we are going to school or we are doing this thing and that thing in our normal life. How can we tell kids that whatever we learn in madrasa or whatever we do in madrasa or whatever Islam we learn, it is supposed to be applied in our lives. It's not supposed to stay in madrasa or in majlis and there. So it's how can we teach kids to apply that in their normal and regular life?
So you're asking a very hard question, sister. Like, you know, because our madrasa system by itself has a lot of issues. You know, it's following like the Sunday school method from Christians that hasn't really helped the Christians. But what I can tell you, I mean, again, I'm just going to talk about it from a teacher perspective. If you build that strong relationship with the children, like, you know, for example, hey, you give them a challenge, you know, do this challenge every day at home, and, you know, we'll talk about it next week. You know, you try to continue that learning and that experience at home. Let's assume we talked about this concept of the egg that we said and the idea. You say, hey, here's an egg for each one of you. Please go ahead and put that egg, like, you know, on your desk. And just think about it. Next time you have an idea, look at that, you know, that egg, and, you know, think, okay, hey, I need to think more of it for this idea to reach its full potential. You sent something home in form of an egg, and you try to continue that conversation and that thought beyond, like, you know, the Saturday or Sunday that you're having, like, you know, the session. But again, this is a question that I cannot answer here, because you're talking about the structure and the approach that either we take as educators or the way parents look at a madrasa. This is a weekend thing only, and that's problematic. But what I would recommend is build that relationship with the children and then challenge them to continue that thought throughout the week and discuss it the next week. Instead of just giving them a homework, like, you know, here's the homework for next week, do this, read this, and come back. Make them think. Tie it to a life skill. Tie it to gardening. Tie it to taking care of, like, you know, something, and then come back and talk about it. Have them, like, take a picture of a challenge that they're doing every day. I hope that helps. Again, but I think your question is a more systematic question, that there's a problem with our madrasa system in general.
Yes, but it helped. Thank you.
Brother or Sister Zaidi?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for your classes. I have a question because I studied in the schools that I have so many mixed students in the classes. So how can we study the Islamic education and Islamic, I think, our aqidah and beliefs to the students, because so many students are so it's become difficult for me to know, to inform all of them and to know and to teach all of them about our aqidah, about our Islam to them. So how can learn to the students these types of education?
I'm sorry, I didn't fully understand the question. You were disconnected, so still the quality is not that good. Do you mind typing the question for us?
Yes, yes, I type for you.
Thank you very much, sister. So I will. We can get to the next question. I'll come back and answer this question once I see it in the chat section.
Sister Neelam, go ahead.
So going back to the sister said before, that once we teach something in our madrasa, it's like it stays in madrasa. So as teachers, we have to continue reminding them that this is part of life, Islam is part of life, etc. I just wanted to know, in Iran, you have an Islamic environment, you have Islamic schools, everything is integrated, if I'm not mistaken, into the curriculum. So Islamic studies are taught in madrasa, in school, and then they go out into an environment which is supposed to be Islamic. But I'm sure you still have the challenges that we would have if we were, say, I'm in Kenya, we have an Islamic school, but the environment to an extent is God-fearing, but they're surrounded by all these challenges. But are the same challenges faced in, say, a country like Iran, where I would think it's easier to bring up our children?
Very good question. By the way, I was born and raised in the United States. So my parents are Iranian and I visit Iran and I know about the education system there. But what I can, you bring up a good point, which is what we're trying to do in the US. We're trying to, at least in the Islamic schools, integrate these values and these belief systems and everything that we do. So we're changing our social studies curriculum, we're changing our math curriculum, a science curriculum, and the government allows us to do it in the US, unlike some other countries. What I can, let me go back to this example of Iran. Even that, all that work that is happening there is not enough. The power of the media and the entertainment system, the edutainment system that they call it, is so powerful that even that is not enough and it's not doing its job right. And that's why I started by saying we're so behind. We're so behind. Well, if that is the case, and I don't want to be like negative, but that is the reality. What can we expect from a madrasa? And that's why we really need to change our madrasa system. This weekend-only thing that parents look at it, okay, we just bring you here so you learn about Islam. The kids are going to dislike that, and they are disliking it, and that's not going to be effective. We have to do things differently. Go back to how we started the conversation. You're trying to prepare them for the year 2040. Our madrasa system is not built to help the students, to prepare them for the year 2040. Even our teachers don't teach it that way. We just follow a curriculum that it is not based on their preferred learning style. So things have to change. Now, you may not have control over that, sister, but you have control on how you teach. And I think that's where we can make a difference. When a teacher bonds a strong emotional relationship with the children, you can do a lot. Let me say this, and I think our time is up. I just have to answer the question from Sister Zaidi is this. The worst punishment, our Quran teacher could do, could do for us was this. He would say, I don't want to be your Quran teacher anymore, and he would leave. When we would bother him so much and we would talk, he would just leave the class and he said, I don't want to be your Quran teacher. We would cry, we would beg for that teacher to come back. That means that teacher had done his job right. If we can do that, instead of being the strict, formal teacher, with all these, if we can get that the students love us, then we can do a lot. That's the first thing we need to work on. Again, our time is up. Let me just quickly answer the question of Sister Zaidi. If it's in a mixed student environment and it's not an Islamic schools, you really can't. Again, you have to get rid of that first layer of the God-centered and talk about the hikmats and the signs that we can, like, what we can learn from nature. And that is why our Islamic schools are so important, because it allows us to do something like this. Unfortunately, in a secular school, you cannot do it. But what you can do is talk about akhlaq, talk about character education and things like that. Brother Asaf, I defer to you.